President Mercer, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate, given everything that's on your plate, that you would spend some time talking to me. Just by way of introduction to everyone who's going to be viewing this, Dr. Peter Mercer is president of Ramapo College. I've known and worked with Dr. Mercer for about a decade. I serve as a trustee. I was the chair of the board and stepped down as chair of the board a couple of years ago, so I'm the immediate past chair, and I continue to serve as a trustee. It's been one of the great privileges of my life, having the opportunity to work with Peter and work with the fine staff and faculty and students at Ramapo. So thanks for that, Peter. So we're calling these things executive chats, and speaking with different people in positions of leadership throughout the nonprofit arena. So that is a backdrop. I'm going to ask you on a personal level, how are you doing? How are you doing? How's Jackie doing in this crazy, uncertain time?
Well, as you know, George, I had initially planned to retire at the end of June. But I stayed on for another couple of years after a discussion with the board because there was so much going on. It was our 50th anniversary. We were completing the Learning Commons, the new library. We were going through accreditation with middle states. I didn't realize that all those things would pale by comparison with what actually transpired. And I sometimes wonder what life would have been like if I decided to go into retirement, because I find now that I told somebody today, I feel like Burt Lancaster in The Birdman of Alcatraz. I'm in my little cell, and occasionally I get to stick my fingers through the bars and talk to a bird, a sparrow or a robin, but otherwise it's pretty isolated. I find the days are falling into one another, and most of the time I can't tell what day it is.
Yeah, I've asked myself, and I've asked other people what day it is. But to that point, Peter, just for clarity, right now your retirement is going to happen a year from June, correct?
Correct.
So June 2021. Mm-hmm. And I've been following your chats that you've been providing, your pieces of communication, both to the Ramapo community and also to the trustees with great interest. Given the reality today, how do you think the college is doing? Has the support of the students and the faculty, your staff, trustees, has it been what you expected? More, less?
It's been better than I expected. I didn't think people would be as adaptable as they've become. We really gave them 2 months notice to change from a face-to-face form of instruction and interaction with students to a remote one, exclusively remote. And it's amazing how the faculty and staff have come through, and the students themselves. I regularly talk to parents, and they understand the circumstances that we face, and they're very tolerant of them. I don't know how long we can expect that to last. I noticed, for example, with the television coverage over the weekend about people in New Jersey going to beaches and nature preserves, and they've forgotten entirely the social separation requirements and the sheer toxicity of the virus and its communicability, and seem to be trying to put themselves back 10 years when you didn't have to worry about these things.
Yeah.
And that's because I think they had fatigue from quarantine. I mean, they wanted to get out, and I understand that.
How would you characterize when you kind of look at the last 2 or 3 months? What was your biggest challenge? What kind of kept you up at night, to use that expression?
You know, that expression has never applied to me until this year, because I was the sort of person who, when I went to bed, I'd say, I've done all I can today, and I would sleep pretty soundly. But I found myself in the last 2 or 3 months waking up and wide-eyed at 3 o'clock in the morning and down at the computer working, because there's no point just wasting time. And I think that's because there's never been as much uncertainty. And of course, because I was fixated on the last 2 years before retirement, my sense of the structure of that 2 years was much more powerful than it would normally be. And
Yeah.
of course, nothing about the structure has really been retained in the traditional sense. I mean, I just finished speaking with the new president of the Faculty Assembly, Dr. Chajuri. It's no different speaking with her than it is speaking with a parent or a student. There's the same concern about the future and knowing what to confront and how to plan. I think that's the biggest change.
Yeah. And I know you're a student of leadership. I know you studied it. I know you talk about it a lot. And as I try to do, and it always comes back to the situation makes the leader. So with that as a bit of a backdrop, what adjustments do you think you've made in either temperament, the way you've been talking to people, the way you've been making pronouncements? Anything come to mind?
I'm far less concerned about the differences among constituent groups at the college and their varying opinions than I used to be. I'm much more focused now on what's commonly held as a point of view and a way to behave. And there's a great deal more commonality that's evident now than I think was the case even 6 months ago.
Yeah, you could easily draw a parallel by saying that your approach has been a little more bipartisan.
Yes, that's true.
Because one of the things that I've been troubled with a little bit, as we're starting to maybe come to the other side of this issue, where partisan divides, where for a point were not that prevalent. Now they're becoming more and more prevalent, and that's disappointing. Have you had the opportunity to speak to some of your colleagues that are running some of the other state colleges in New Jersey and universities? What's those conversations been like?
Well, right now they're focused on admissions and getting students in place. We actually are fortunate to be probably the most successful this year. We are only 2% behind in our numbers compared to last year. Most schools are at least 10% behind.
Yeah, I did see some of those numbers, and I was, I mean, our numbers from a recruitment standpoint have been traditionally very strong.
They have been, yeah.
And sometimes I wonder how they remain so strong, but because we have quality from the top down. But hearing those numbers now is just remarkable. One of the big challenges that so many of our clients have faced with the academic institutions is the uncertainty about who's coming back,
Exactly.
and some families can't afford to come back. And this is on both college and a secondary school level.
I think there's another factor too, George. Even if they can't afford it financially, and even though they put down an $800 deposit, that's not going to prevent a lot of parents come the end of August, if they're not sure that their kids are going to be safe, from saying, we'll give up the $800, but we're not going to put you in a situation where we're not confident that you can be safe. So that's an assurance we've got to continue to give people as we're able.
It must be, in one respect, a little challenging, where some of the colleges will look at what you've been able to accomplish in terms of growing Ramapo, but even during this time, maintaining a student body. And although there are going to be uncertainties that we're all going to be faced with, I don't know. Do college presidents will you speak to each other on that direct and candid level?
We do now more so than we did in the past. We had a meeting this morning at 8 o'clock, for example. We typically now meet by telephone at least once a week, and people are franker than they used to be. I had my colleagues this morning tell me where they were on their deposits. This never happened before.
Yeah. How was your team functioned? I know you had, obviously the trustees communicate with you on a pretty regular basis, but your inner staff, have you seen adjustments with them?
The inner staff are working extraordinarily hard, and they've always worked hard. But what's happening now, of course, is that virtually everything we're doing has an element of novelty. So we have task forces looking at the various factors which will influence whether we can open face-to-face in the fall. We've never had to have that before. Each of those groups has to be headed by a vice president, and everything is added. It's all iterative and incremental.
Sitting here today, what's your best guess about what late August, early September is going to look like at Ramapo?
I don't think there's a very strong chance that we'll be back to face-to-face instruction.
Okay.
So what I think we're going to be focusing on, and here I'm being speculative because our committees are still working and I don't have reports from them yet, but I think we're going to have to try and have a dual type of experience. We want to make sure that the freshmen in particular have the experience of being on campus. It's more important for them than it is for the upperclassmen. But I don't know how we're going to do that. It's not easy to think of.
And you know, I know that this is the kind of discussion that you'll be having with the trustees, but is that a call that will be made by you in concert with the trustees, or will you get an edict from the state?
I don't know, but what part of the discussion this morning was about another group that's been commissioned by the Secretary of Higher Education to look at the whole question of reopening. And she did not have any firm or substantive points to make at this meeting, but she did say to them, there will be guidelines. Sounds like the title of a Coen Brothers film.
Yes, it does. Let me switch gears. I had the opportunity earlier today to spend a little time with Kathy and Angela and talking about philanthropy. And I know that I shouldn't presume this. Have you had the chance over the past 2 or 3 months to have any kind of discussions with major donors about the different campaigns that are underway?
We've not had much discussion with donors because, coincident with the stock market dive, it didn't look like a ripe topic for discussion.
Correct.
I think that's changing, particularly after today, potentially.
Yeah. Well, the fact that, you know, I think that there's a direct parallel between the economy opening up, even though it's not opening up the same way that it was before it closed. There's hope, and the markets react to hope without question.
And what they perceive to be greater certainty.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been doing with our clients is when there's a deep and abiding relationship between the institution and the donor, is that you almost ask permission to have the conversation about philanthropy. Yes. Obviously, getting past how are they doing and how are they faring at this time, and then say, I don't want to be presumptuous, but is this something we could talk about? And that might be a way of over the next month or so to begin to kind of test that out with certain people that obviously have a very close relationship with you and with the college. Have you? I don't want to get overly personal, but what have you learned, if anything? We talked about what's keeping you up, that you usually sleep very well. But is anything that you've learned about yourself that surprised you in any way?
I haven't been particularly introspective in the last 2 or 3 months because there's been so much going on externally, but I would say that I have learned that I have more tolerance for ambiguity than I thought I had. And I think I rely more on my ability to marshal other people's energies than to feel I have to do the job myself. What we're confronting requires everybody's participation. And I'm also, between you and me, quite aware of the fact that I'll be here for only another year. And so I can't behave as if I'm putting my imprimatur on what the college is going to be over the next 15 years. That
Right.
won't be up to me. What I have
Right.
to do is hand over things in the best possible shape for the new person who will take over, we hope, in a year.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's been just a wonderful experience to work closely with you.
Likewise.
And I really appreciate it. And I do know, I have a very good sense, I will say, about how valuable your time is. So the very fact that you were generous enough to give me some of your time today, and that other people listening to you can benefit is really much appreciated, Peter.
Well,
And
if that's true, I'm happy.
yeah. Any other closing thoughts before we conclude our little chat?
Well, I used to be good friends. We've not seen each other lately, but with the former president of the University of Toronto, who, like me, had been a dean of the law school in Toronto when I was a dean at the University of Western Ontario. And he was very successful, extraordinarily successful. But he told me once that the reason he was successful was because he had a surplus in the pension fund of a few $100 million. And the courts ruled that he was entitled to use that surplus for university purposes. So he built a fundraising campaign around it. There was $1 billion fundraising campaign. And he kept saying to me, if it hadn't been for that pension fund, I'd be chopped liver. And it always struck me that it was a very charming way to put it, because you don't get to choose the times in which you play a leadership role. You take your chances always. And the vicissitudes of life now are such that things can swing wildly in one direction or the other without you being able to control them. And I think that's different from even a generation ago, when things at least appeared more stable. And of
Yeah.
course, the appearance of stability is just about as important as stability itself.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with, this goes back a few decades, but it was the president of Catholic University. And he said to me, he said, George, when I walk into the meetings with various presidents of the major colleges and universities in the country, he said, I can't help but see the size of their endowment kind of tattooed on their head. And he said that always, I know what kind of latitude they have, know what kind of creativity they can afford to have.
Yeah.
And he said, by comparison, we were very restricted. So it's kind of tied into what you were saying.
Yeah.
So Peter, Jackie's well, I assume she's doing.
He's very well, and Joanne the same.
Joanne's doing fine. Thank you for asking. Well, Peter, be well, and I look forward to seeing you sooner than later. You take care. Thank you again, sir. Bye-bye.